We are now officially less than a month away from election night, and the race for the White House is shaping up to be a true toss-up. Right now, according to Polymarket, Donald Trump holds a slight edge with a 52% chance of winning. What does that really mean? Well, if we were to hold this election 100 times, Trump would come out on top in 52 of those, while Kamala Harris would win 47. There's also around a 1 chance of something totally unexpected happening, something that neither side has factored into their calculations. These odds are more than just random guesses. They're tied directly to how well each candidate is performing in critical battleground states, which are really where this race will be won or lost. Polymarket, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a prediction market where people actually bet on the outcomes of elections and other major events. They put their money on the line, making it a little different from traditional polls, which only ask for opinions. The idea here is that when people have a financial stake in the outcome, they tend to be more thoughtful and grounded in their predictions. So while polls can give us a snapshot of where public opinion stands at a given moment, prediction markets can offer a more forward-looking and arguably more accurate assessment of what might happen because people are literally betting on it. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the odds for each of the key battleground states, providing my own analysis along the way as to why they're rated the way they are. As we go state by state, it'll become clear that these elections are about much more than just national polling numbers. They're really about individual state contests. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button like this video and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. So let's start by looking at the states where the outcome is basically already decided, the so-called safe states. These are the places where either Trump or Harris has a better than 95% chance of winning, making them the foundational pieces of their respective electoral strategies. On Kamala Harris's side, the Pacific Coast remains a Democratic stronghold. Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii are all expected to stay firmly blue. This Pacific blue wall has been in place for 9 consecutive election cycles, and it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon. Colorado, which has been trending left faster than almost any other state in the country, is also safe for Harris, as is Illinois. Over in the Northeast, Harris can count on a host of states where Biden won by huge margins in 2020. New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland are all securely in the Democratic column. To give you some perspective, Biden won each of these states by at least 15 percentage points in the last election, and there's no reason to believe that Harris will do any worse. In addition, Harris is almost certain to win in Maine's 1st congressional district, which has consistently voted Democratic, as well as the District of Columbia, where Democrats have such a stranglehold that it doesn't even have its own prediction market. Why? Because DC has never been won by less than 50 points in favor of the Democrats, making it as close to a guaranteed victory as you can get in politics. On the other side, Trump has his own collection of safe states. He's virtually guaranteed to win in the solidly red states of North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah. These states have been Republican for a long time, and there's nothing to suggest that's going to change this cycle. Nebraska's statewide election, along with its 1st and 3rd congressional districts, are also solid for Trump. Remember, Nebraska is one of the few states that splits its electoral votes by district, but the 1st and 3rd districts are deep red, so Trump will lock those up easily. Moving into the southern part of the country, Trump is certain to win Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. These are all reliably Republican states that gave Trump comfortable margins in 2020. Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia also fall firmly into Trump's column. He carried all of these states by at least 15 percentage points in 2020, so they're considered safe bets for him again this time around. Now let's take a look at the electoral map with all the safe states filled in. Kamala Harris jumps out to an early lead in the race to 270 electoral votes, with 191 locked in compared to Trump's 122. That leaves a total of 225 electoral votes still up for grabs across 17 more competitive states, which are shaded in gray on our map. These are the battlegrounds where the real fight is going to take place and where both campaigns are likely to pour most of their resources in the final stretch. Next, we come to the likely states. There are states where one candidate has an 88 to 95 chance of winning. These states strongly favor one candidate, but there's still a small window for an upset. Let's start with Harris's likely states. First up is Minnesota, the home state of Harris's running mate. Tim Walz. Minnesota has been a Democratic stronghold for 12 consecutive election cycles, and the betting markets currently give Harris a 92 chance of winning the state. However, I think that might be a bit optimistic given the polling data. Harris's lead in Minnesota is slim, ranging from 3 to 6 percentage points in the most recent polls. So I would rate her chances closer to 80, moving the state from the likely to lean category. Next, we have New Mexico, where Harris is also heavily favored. Biden won the state by 11 percentage points in 2020, and Harris currently has a 92-80 chance of winning according to the latest odds. This feels about right given that Harris is leading by more than 8 points on average in the polls, with some showing her up by double digits. Harris is also favored to win in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which is worth 1 electoral vote. This district, centered around Omaha, has been trending left in recent years, with Biden flipping it in 2020 by 6.5 points. The betting markets currently give Harris a 90 chance of holding on to this district. Moving over to Virginia, Harris is also very likely to win its 13 electoral votes. Biden carried Virginia by double digits in 2020, though the race has been somewhat more competitive this cycle. Harris leads by around 4.8 in the latest polling averages, which is similar to her margin in Minnesota. Despite the tighter polls, Polymarket gives Harris an 88 chance of winning Virginia, making it a likely state for her. Finally, in New England, both New Hampshire and the statewide race in Maine are likely to go for Harris. While these states are somewhat more competitive than their deep blue neighbors, Biden still won New Hampshire by 7 points and Maine by 9 in 2020. Polling suggests that Harris will hold both states by similar margins, making them likely blue states as well. Now let's move on to Trump's likely states. First up is Alaska, where Trump has a 91 chance of winning. Alaska hasn't voted for a Democrat in 60 years. The Trump's 10-point margin in 2020 was the narrowest for a Republican since 1968. Moving down to the Midwest, Iowa and Ohio are also likely to stay in Trump's column. Both of these states voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, but they've shifted sharply to the right since then. Trump won both states by at least 8 points in 2016 and 2020, and he currently has a 93 chance of winning Iowa and a 92 chance in Ohio, according to the latest betting odds. Trump is also likely to win Maine's 2nd congressional district, where he has an 82 chance of victory. This district is one of the most rural and whitest in the country, and those demographics tend to favor Republicans. Now in Florida, Trump is heavily favored to keep the state in the Republican column for the 4th straight election cycle. Florida, with its 30 electoral votes, has long been one of the quintessential swing states. However, it has been leaning more and more Republican in recent years, and Trump expanded his margin of victory there in 2020 compared to 2016. Polymarket gives Trump an 86 chance of winning Florida, and the latest polling shows him leading by 6 points on average. Moving to Texas, the 2nd largest prize on the electoral map with 40 votes, Trump is also favored to win. Joe Biden did manage to get 46.5 a vote in Texas in 2020, the most for a Democrat since 1976, but the state is still leaning Republican overall. Polymarket gives Trump an 89 chance of winning Texas. And while his polling lead is smaller here than in Florida, Texas remains a likely red state. With these likely states added to the map, Trump's total rises to 219 electoral votes, just 7 shy of Harris's 226. This leaves 93 electoral votes remaining across the 7 most competitive states, which we've been tracking all cycle. These are the states where neither Trump nor Harris has better than a 70 chance of winning, making them true toss-ups. Now, let's break down those remaining battlegrounds. Let's break down those remaining battleground states, starting with Arizona. Arizona is classified as a lean state, meaning Trump is favored to win, but it's not a sure thing. Right now, Trump has a 67 chance of winning Arizona, according to Polymarket. And it's important to note that Arizona has been a historically Republican state. In fact, before Joe Biden won it in 2020, Arizona had only gone blue once in the previous 70 years. The reason Biden managed to flip Arizona was largely due to Maricopa County, which includes the Phoenix metro area and has been growing rapidly. With that growth has come more diversity, and urban areas like Phoenix tend to lean Democratic. Biden won Arizona by just 0.3 in 2020, so it's always been a competitive state, but it's still fundamentally Republican at its core. Even though Democrats have won 5 consecutive statewide elections there for president, U.S. Senate, and governor, Trump is currently leading the polling average by 1.4. This state is a perfect example of why we can't rely solely on polling. While Democrats have made gains here, Arizona's Republican roots run deep, and Trump's odds reflect that. Arizona has 11 electoral votes, and if Trump wins there, it will be a critical boost toward his path to 270. Next up is Georgia, another state that falls into the lean category for Trump. Like Arizona, Georgia was one of the closest states in the 2020 election. Biden won it by a razor-thin margin of just 0.2, driven in large part by record turnout among Black voters in Atlanta and its surrounding suburbs. Atlanta has been a key driver of Georgia's leftward shift in recent years, but Trump is now slightly favored to win the state in 2024. Polymarket gives him a 64 chance of victory. His best odds since President Biden dropped out of the race. The latest polling shows Trump with a 1.5 lead, and one of the most recent polls from Quinnipiac University even has him up by 5 points. Georgia's importance can't be overstated. It's a state where Democrats feel they've made significant inroads, but Trump's current lead in the polls and his strong odds in the betting markets show just how competitive the state remains. House with 16 electoral votes, Georgia is a prize that both campaigns will fight hard for in the final weeks. Moving to North Carolina, we find a similar story. This state is also leaning toward Trump, but margin is even tighter. Polymarket currently gives Trump 60 chance of winning North Carolina, which is narrower than his odds in both Georgia and Arizona. What's interesting here is that North Carolina used to be considered more Democratic leaning than either of those states. In 2008, Barack Obama won North Carolina, and it remained competitive in the years that followed. However, since 2012, it has consistently leaned Republican. Trump won North Carolina by 3.6 in 2016 and by 1.3 in 2020. Now, in 2024, the polling average has Trump leading by about 0.6, but this state has a long history of tight races. In fact, every presidential and Senate race in North Carolina over the last 8 cycles has been decided by less than 6 points. North Carolina is worth 16 electoral votes, and while Trump is favored, it remains one of the closest races on the map. For Democrats, this state has long been seen as within reach, but they've struggled to actually turn that potential into a win on election day. Now, let's turn to the Rust Belt, which is where things get really interesting. 3 states in this region, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, are often seen as the keys to the entire election. These states voted for Democrats in every presidential election from 1992 to 2016, but they all flipped to Trump in 2016 by incredibly narrow margins, helping him secure his first term. In 2020, Joe Biden won them back. And now Kamala Harris needs to hold on to all 3 if she wants to get to 270 electoral votes. Let's start with Pennsylvania. Right now, Trump has a 50-66 chance of winning Pennsylvania, according to Polymarket, which is the highest his odds have been in months. The polling average shows the race as an exact tie, with half of the polls showing a dead heat. Pennsylvania is widely regarded as the most likely tipping point state, meaning it could very well be the state that decides the entire election. In fact, election forecaster Nate Silver gives Pennsylvania a 33 chance of being the state that tips the scales, almost double the likelihood of the next closest state. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, his path to 270 electoral votes becomes much more straightforward. For Harris, Pennsylvania is essential. Without it, she would not only need to win every other remaining battleground state, but also flip a state that is already leaning Trump. That's a tall order, which is why Pennsylvania is seen as such a pivotal state in this election. Next up is Michigan, where Harris is currently favored, but by a razor-thin margin. Polymarket gives her a 52 chance of winning Michigan, and the polling average shows her leading by less than 1. Michigan, like Pennsylvania, was part of the so-called blue wall that crumbled for Democrats in 2016, allowing Trump to win the presidency. Biden managed to flip it back in 2020, winning by 2.8, but this state has remained extremely competitive. Harris's slight edge in the odds reflects the uncertainty surrounding Michigan's outcome. Wisconsin, the third Rust Belt state in this trio, is in a similar position. Harris has a 52 chance of winning here as well, and the race is expected to be incredibly close, just as it was in 2020 when Biden won the state by less than 1. Like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin was a Democratic stronghold until 2016 when Trump narrowly won it. Now, with 10 electoral votes, It's another must-win state for Harris if she hopes to reach 270. Finally, we have Nevada, which rounds out the list of core battleground states. Unlike the Rust Belt states, Nevada has voted Democratic in the last 2 elections, but it remains competitive. Harris has a 53 chance of winning Nevada, according to Polymarket. In 2020, Biden won the state by just 2.4, and the polls suggest a similarly tight race this time around. With 6 electoral votes, Nevada may not be as large as some of the other battlegrounds, but it could still play a crucial role in determining the outcome. So there you have it, the battleground map for 2024. At this point, it's clear that the race is incredibly tight, and any of these states could swing the election in favor of Trump or Harris. Let me know in the comments what you think of this map and which states you're watching most closely. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and give this video a like if you found it helpful. As always, thanks so much for watching.